Today we will be reading another fractured fairy tale entitled Sleepless Beauty by Ange C.P. and illustrated by Anthony James A. Corralejo, published by Brille Petit. Sleepless Beauty is a fractured fairy tale loosely based on Sleeping Beauty by the Brothers Grimm. It was a day full of promise for the kingdom of Dorma. After a long wait, the king and queen were finally expecting the arrival of their first child. In the wee hours of the morning, an adorable baby girl was born. The king and queen named her Somniera, which means a dream fulfilled. Somniera was a sight to behold, with her smooth alabaster skin, soft pink cheeks, and big bright eyes surrounded by long, curly lashes. Delighted to share their new bundle of joy, the king and queen invited everyone in the kingdom. Or at least they thought they did. For godmothers, they handpicked 3 sprightly fairies. The first fairy tap danced and waved her magic wand and gifted the princess with a clear, loud, and beautiful singing voice. The second fairy sprinkled fairy dust, swooshed her wand, and bestowed the princess with a cheerful spirit and a generous heart. Then, just as a third fairy was about to speak, the sky darkened and thunder boomed. Out of nowhere, a scraggly fairy appeared, the oldest in the kingdom. "I am insulted!" the fuming fairy screeched. "You invited the whole kingdom. You welcomed the goat herder and all his goats. You went to great lengths to inform the monks on the top of the kingdom's highest peaks. You even gathered the swans and ducks from all our lakes. And yet somehow you had forgotten to invite me." The old fairy walked to the crib and raised her arms. Storm clouds gathered overhead as the fairy spoke. "Don't worry, little one. I still brought something for you. On your 16th birthday, you will prick your finger on a needle and die." The old fairy then cackled loudly before disappearing in a puff of black smoke. After hearing the fairy's curse, the queen dropped to the floor and sobbed hysterically. Desperate, the king turned to the last fairy, who had not yet given her blessing, to Somniera. He pleaded, "Is there anything that you can do?" "I may not be able to undo the curse," the fairy said, "but let me try to soften it. When the princess gets pricked, she will not die, but will fall into deep sleep for a long time. Only a kiss from a prince worthy of her love can wake her up." The next day, the king ordered to burn everything that had needles in them. But despite all of their efforts, the king and queen lived in fear of the curse and constantly checked on the royal baby. This caused Somniera to have terrible sleeping habits because she would often be woken up in the middle of the night. And what happens when a baby's sleep is interrupted? She cries. And cry she did, using the fairy's gift of loud voice to wake up the entire kingdom with her bawling. Somniera grew up as a girl who couldn't sleep through the night, making her always tired and irritable. She became the opposite of the dreamy and beautiful princess that the kingdom had expected. In fact, the villagers secretly called her a walking nightmare, for she kept the entire kingdom awake. Everyone was miserable, and it showed. Small arguments would turn into brawls as people became short-tempered from lack of sleep. It was only the king and queen's patience that held the kingdom together. As Somniera turned into a teen, her once smooth and alabaster skin turned pale and pimply from the lack of sleep. Dark bags surrounded her once beautiful eyes. She became very cranky and lashed out at everyone who tried to speak with her. As a result, none of the princes who were invited by the king to meet her came for a second time. "We have to do something, or else she may never find her true love," the queen wailed. The king paced around his room and thought of a solution. "Let's throw a party." The queen nodded excitedly. she announced to all the land that they would be needing new gowns for the princess to wear for this special ball. Unknown to the queen, the old witch disguised herself as a seamstress. She sewed a flowing cream gown for the princess with matching beaded gloves. The witch invited the princess for a fitting. When the princess tried the gloves on, she got pricked by a needle that the witch hid in it. The queen screamed as Somniera crumpled on the floor, fast asleep. They placed her in a room and called for the fairy who had helped soften the curse. What shall happen to the princess when she wakes up in 100 years and all of us are gone? The king asked as he gripped the queen's hands. If it pleases you, I would suggest to put everyone in deep sleep so that when Somniera wakes up, she will find all things as they were. I will also enclose the kingdom in thorny thickets and bushes to protect it from anyone who tries to invade it, the fairy suggested. The king and queen thought that this was the best idea for the entire kingdom, for in their hearts, they also wished for the gift of sleep after 16 years of caring for the princess non-stop. And so the fairy waved her magic wand. Everyone in the kingdom fell asleep. Then she wrapped the entrances in thick and sharp thorns, meanwhile praying that someday a special prince would come along. The years melted away and the kingdom was forgotten. The fairy godmother thought all was lost when out of the blue, a prince appeared at the castle's entrance. The prince was calling on his best friend, a dog that had run through the thicket. When the prince began hacking at the weeds and the thorns, he saw a beautifully carved wooden door. He pushed it open and was surprised to find a castle filled with sleeping people. Men were sleeping on tables, dogs were sleeping on the ground, guards were asleep holding their spears. Merchants were snoring as they leaned on their stalls. Even the goats were asleep on half-eaten patches of grass. The prince was astonished. I remember this story, he thought to himself. A long time ago, his parents told him of a kingdom cursed to sleep until a worthy prince came along. Finally, he stumbled in the chambers of the king and queen who sat on their thrones, sleeping peacefully. The prince went on farther. At the top room of the tower, he saw the princess. Because Somniera finally got some rest, her skin cleared and her pinkish cheeks showed once more. Her eye bags were no longer puffy and dark. Instead, long and thick lashes framed her face. The prince was smitten. He took hold of the princess's hand and gave her an earnest kiss. After a few seconds, the princess opened her eyes, stretched her arms, and yawned loudly. Throughout the kingdom, people began waking up with big smiles on their faces. It was as if the kingdom was brand new. Oh, what sleep can do! Grateful to their savior, the king and queen threw a grand party for the prince. There, he danced with the princess all night long. Eventually, the prince found his happy ever after with the princess. And Somniera never lost sleep again. The end. Thank you for joining me on Brille Petit Presents. I hope you enjoyed our reading of Sleepless Beauty. Like and subscribe for more storytime videos on Brille Petit. Till next time, bye!